welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I will be your host for Tuesday or Wednesday or Monday or Thursday or Easter Sunday, depending on when you're listening, because after all, it's your podcast. A couple of weeks ago, the extremely well-run technical marvel that was our chat with Tristan and Mark from All or Nothing Productions, and I promised, because of my inability to be able to organise a dice rolling in a dice rolling factory, that they would be coming back on. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honour to present to you distinguished guests, Tristan Hall.
Hello.
And Mark Chaplin. Yeah!
And the crowd goes bananas.
I'm doing that Kermit the Frog, you know, when he does the arm thing, the gift that you see, where he's just like going absolutely crazy. It's the Muppet Show! I wish I could do
Well, you
Kermit.
got a couple of Muppets on tonight.
That was pretty good.
I wasn't going to say that, do you know what I mean? It's good to be dead again. It's good to have them back again. It's good to be doing anything again. It's that kind of thing. Well done on the campaign, guys, because when I must admit, when you were on, and I was questioning the abilities to be able to press record and stuff like that, I was kind of a bit worried about what was going to happen with the campaign, but it's going really, really well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm delighted with it. As we mentioned earlier, it's beaten the pants out of our first two campaigns for Gloom, Kill Forth and 1066 Tears to Many Mothers. In just a few days, we're effectively past where they were after 2 weeks. So, statistically, it's looking lovely. We've got a really good crowd of people, really positive comments and support from the backers. And I think the quality of the game shines through, and people are sort of picking up on that. And it's been really fun. It's been really great opening. It's great continuing. We've got loads of stuff coming up that we're releasing. Mark's done a load of designer videos and stuff, playthroughs and things. So we got loads of content to share out with the crowd as the weeks progress. So it's just I always am really grateful to be involved with being able to put a creative project out there that people are happy to engage with and get excited about. And this is one that I'm as excited about as anybody is bringing it to life. And I'm pretty sure Mark's chuffed with getting this years of development that he's put into the game finally sort of paying off as well, and having it come to the real world sort of thing.
I mean, Mark, what was your thoughts on it? I mean, when Tristan pressed the go button on the campaign, did you stay on the campaign to see what the first kind of couple of hours were on, or did you just kind of leave it alone and say I'll come back later on, or were you frantically pressing F5 every couple of minutes going, come on, come on?
That sounds like everyone else I know. No, I was at work, so it was hell actually. I sat and watched the first 5 minutes, and it had got off to a pretty grand start, but after that I couldn't check it that often. I was just busy, but I finished work about 2ish, and it wasn't that much longer after that. It was about 4:30, I think, when it funded, reached the threshold. So that was quite satisfying, that we did it in the first day. So you've got to dial your expectations correctly, so that you don't, when we don't know how it's a long haul, isn't it? 32 days, I think it was, and so it's a wild ride, isn't it? So it was a complete mess of, if that's what you're trying to get to, a complete mess of responses and emotions. I didn't know quite which should be the one that rose up. Excitement, dread, stress. At everything all simultaneously. It was a bit of a hot mess on the starting day.
Did you think, this Kickstarter malarkey, it's easy?
No, I didn't think that. I still don't think.
I'll do like 5 of these. I'll do.
No.
It's just like, I don't know what everybody's talking about. I mean, I just pressed the button and like 8 hours later it was funded. I don't know what all the fuss is about. Social media, whatever. Go back to licking some toads now. I've kind of done my bit.
Always fun.
Always fun. As well as free diving with great white sharks as well, which is always a good thing.
Something I wouldn't recommend.
No, not always, especially not if you're wearing some kind of big meat jacket or something. But okay, I mean, this obviously now puts you in the position where you're now in the situation where you're planning kind of stretch goals and potential additions to the campaign. So in terms of that, where are you with that? Is that already planned? Are you just sitting there going, haha, bring it on because I am organised? Are you sitting there going, why am I doing a French accent when I need to be designing French stretch goals?
That's a French accent?
Mark is locked in a room and I basically every 5 minutes whip him and say, more stretch goals, more!
I take it so he's not getting a financial reward then, you're just...
It's just fear of punishment.
Yeah.
No, we set out with a plan of what the game would contain, and Mark had outlined that originally. So I told him to quote me for everything that we absolutely needed, for the game to work and everything. And then a few other things sort of came up where, as development went on, Mark, ever enthusiastic, was like, "What about this? We could add this in. Oh, and I had this really cool idea about this, and all these other things." And I was like, "Well, we've quoted, and we've kind of got the financials fixed for X number of components. So let's see if we can squeeze those in later." But we did have a discussion backwards and forwards about things like the crew. So in the narrative of the game, the 9 crew members awaken or come out of cryosleep or whatever the situation is at the start of the game. A number of the crew are dead, and Mark had already said that there was a dozen sort of people had set off on this original mining ship, and we had 9 characters, and I was like, well, clearly then we need the other 3. So that was was sort of an early development, and we kind of knew that they were going to be a staggered release in terms of stretch goals if and when we funded. But the other stuff Mark has been sort of coming up with over the past few months and stuff, and they're fairly easy to just integrate into the main game. So we're just making sure that we don't overstretch ourselves, from a production point of view, and making sure that they're all, they're all going to work as soon as we go out to the printers, it's going to happen now. Now that it's funded, we know that it's going to go into development, it's going to go to the printers and everything else, so that we know we also have a cap on how many things we can offer. So in terms of the Kickstarter project itself, I'm running it exactly like the last ones, in that we have a set amount of content that we can include that we'd love to hit, but we're only going to include it as and when we do hit our milestones. And at the moment, the backers have been smashing through them. We're already over 35 grand, so we've been able to unlock a bunch already, and a bunch of really cool ones, like a new character. We've had a new character already, so it's exciting to be able to sort of make the game bigger than it is, but also not stretch the system too much. So everything that we are going to put in is something that you can just shuffle into the existing components. Extra cards, extra characters, tarot cards, things like that. So,
is it coming down to like component quality then? Is that, are you looking at that over kind of adding in, are you balancing up adding that in with the content? Because I think one of the discussions that seems to be cropping up more and more is that extra cards, extra story, extra scenarios are all easy to do because they're basically, you're producing stuff on cards and pieces of paper. But then if people are starting to look at things like plasticky stuff, if people are looking at, plasticky first player tokens and stuff like that, that's when that can really, really ramp the cost up quite considerably. And it can start to eat into kind of like your profit margin. Because you've obviously done 1066, and you've also done Gloom of Kilforth, and you're in that production process just now, has that kind of given you a better overview to say to actually, Mark, bring us all the content I can eat, but we have to maybe keep an eye on the component side of things if we're gonna, if this is gonna continue to go, we have to look at kind of maybe edible content as opposed to fancy stuff.
Yeah, no, it's from my point of view, bring it on. As much creative content as we can get is a better situation to be in. Because say if we hit the limit, the upper limit that I have of the kind of stuff that we can crowbar into the base game, and the stuff that Mark's designing is still adding value, and of course it will, because he's a genius designer. But anything extra that he comes up with that we can't crowbar into the base game box, we can always parcel off into an expansion if necessary, and and breathe more life into the project as time goes on. So there are no bad ideas. I mean, if there were genuinely bad ideas, we wouldn't use them. But all of the stuff that Mark's come up with so far is to add variability, replayability, and extra value to the campaign. In terms of component quality, one of the things that I've kind of saddled myself with from the outset is the same with Gloomy Killforth. It just had to be the highest quality it could be. So we wanted the best manufacturers, the best ivory core cards, really solid, thick cardboard tokens, and all the stuff that I want in a game. You always know when you open a game, even some games that I really enjoy, you open them, you take the cards out or whatever, and you can see where they've cut corners, and you can see where the card stock's too flimsy or thin, or the tokens themselves are too small. I don't want to give examples because it feels like I'm dissing on other games, but there's a bunch of games that have arrived recently, even where you'd think that people had already sort of realised they can't get away with stuff like that, where a particularly high-profile game, featuring zombies, that I received recently, had the teeny tiniest tokens that you've ever seen. It was like a joke. It was like the manufacturers had got a decimal point in the wrong place, and I was like, "You have to be kidding me!" So from my point of view, for us to ever release a game, there's always going to be a bare minimum component quality. It has to be whatever you think of the gameplay or anything else. When you open the box, you go, "Cool," all of this stuff is good. It's good, high quality components, because I think that's the impression that I want to have when I'm buying a game. So that's an absolute minimum for me. So when we put something up like we did, the first stretch goal was ivory core cards, and I think from my point of view, I don't think it was ever going to be in doubt that they wouldn't have been that, but I just wanted to make sure that we had it covered off, and that people know if they're buying Whole or Nothing Productions game, they're going to get that seal of quality. And so, I mean, that's crucial for me. In terms of adding upgrades and stuff, there would be a limit on that, because by its nature, the components that we're going to provide are going to be perfect for playing the game with. So if you're looking for like a plastic miniature alien or something like that, that's probably very unlikely to happen in one of our campaigns, because what you'll get with the standees is going to be perfect, for this game. So, so we're sticking to the limits of what we've got and where we're heading in terms of the stretch goals and the financials and everything. But in terms of creativity, if Mark keeps coming up with stuff, we'll find a way to fit it in, even if not in this campaign, maybe further down the line.
I mean, how have you found, Mark? How have you found dealing with the third member of the team, as in the community on Kickstarter? Because I'm reading through I've read through the comments, because I like to do my research before I speak to anybody that I bring on the show. But I notice you've been fairly active in the Kickstarter kind of community, the comment section, kind of jumping in and kind of replying to questions and stuff like that.
Do you think that's a good idea, or?
I think that's a fantastic idea, and you'll get an absolutely amazing amount of kudos from people for actually just jumping in and doing that. I mean, has it given you, replying to some of the questions that have been up there, has it given you like some ideas for maybe expansions, or have you maybe gone back and think, actually, we maybe we need to tweak this slightly? I mean, how useful for you has it been to have kind of these several kind of these several hundred voices, almost 800 people with the potential to kind of chip in on what you've produced?
Well, I wasn't sure. Obviously, it being the first campaign I've been involved in, I've backed a few things. But I don't normally go on to the comments section because some of them are like a hornet's nest, and I was a bit worried whether if I went on there I might stir things up. But actually, they seem like a pretty good bunch, and so like you say, it's if they find it a useful thing to do, then I'm all for doing it. Mainly because I've just not seen an awful lot of that. When I have perused anything, there just hasn't been that much involvement. You have to wade through tons before you see anybody's reply. That was one of the things that I always thought was great about Tristan's earlier campaigns. I thought they really went above and beyond the Call of Duty. But but as to whether it's of any use, so far people have been talking about an expansion, what do you call it, a thought experiment expansion that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And a couple of the ideas on there seem really actually quite good. So yes, but as to changing anything in the main game, that's pretty much locked. I wouldn't. Yeah. I'm not going to future-proof myself now by saying, well, somebody said something and I was like, oh my God, have an epiphany moment. Why didn't I think of that? I mean, somebody may do, but so far, I find people actually playing the game, it's very easy to read the rules or even watch a playthrough and get a skewed perspective on something, either for good or bad. And then when they play it, the problems they thought they had, they don't actually have. I mean, we've all done that. I've watched something and then been forced to play it by friends and thought, I actually quite like this. But my biases beforehand told me otherwise, and people might find that with our Kickstarter campaign. I've noticed you always know with a heavy theme game that theme questions will always come up because there's to connect the theme to the game requires some abstraction, doesn't it? Unless you've got tons of rules that cover everything, you've always got to have some sort of simplification, and in that process will come the nerd questions that we know and love, the kind of questions that I would ask or scratch my head over. Why are we doing this? Why would the alien do that? Can the alien do this? Has the alien got magic powers? And I've noticed there's a Reddit thread on asking similar questions. Not that I'm on Reddit, but I had a look anyway. That's the power of search engines, and things pop up and you think, scratch your head. So I try to answer those. And in fact, in one of the early drafts of the script, we had the rules. We had a theme Q&A, which I quite liked, but whether it makes the final cut of the rules yet is yet to be seen, depending on the page count, I guess, and how many illustrations are finally squeezed into it, which I don't think I've ever seen in a game. I just wanted people to know that I'd thought about these things beforehand. But as it happens, the questions that have come up are different ones that were in the theme FAQ in the book. So it's a strange old. I'm waiting for one of my pre-answers to come up and just go, ha! I've already thought of that one, but no, they've come up with other ones.
Copy and paste it.
So,
do you feel under pressure to kind of be monitoring the comments then when you've got free time to kind of jump in and answer kind of questions? Are you having to kind of be quite disciplined with yourself and say, okay, let's give ourselves a couple hours every night, or are you just kind of currently just going, right, okay, I need to go back and answer that question, or I'll leave that for later on, or that's already been answered before?
I guess it's a continuum, and I'm somewhere between the 2 points that you described. I don't really know. Yeah. I don't see it and then think, I've got to respond. There's not been one thing I thought, I must respond to this now. And if there was something that wound me up, I'd probably not answer it for a few hours and might have a better, a more nuanced approach later on. But I can't think of anything so far that has made me annoyed. So I've not answered, as you've seen, I've not answered everything because some of it is in Tristan's wheelhouse, and when it's not regarding the rules, or I just wonder whether what more would be gained answering the same question in a different. How many different ways can I answer the same rules question? Because there's going to be some people, that no matter how you phrase something or demonstrate it, they're just not going to like the answer they get anyway. So the only way properly to demonstrate some of these things would be for them to play it. But that sounds a bit like a cop out. Written text should counterspell all their thoughts and queries, but that's not the way it works in real life.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess one of the things I've noticed is there do seem to be some people who are taking to the Board Game Geek kind of pages and actually posting up kind of their thoughts and stuff like that as well. I guess that's one of the things that maybe doesn't work about Kickstarter is that it's almost impossible to follow a thread of a conversation, a kind of a train of thought between, say, like a conversation between you, because all it takes is if you're not back on the boards for a couple of hours, then somebody could be saying, oh, could somebody answer this question because I'm just about to back, kind of thing, and then it's like, oh, nobody answering my question, okay, bye then, kind of thing, I'm just gonna, but it's almost like you've got your FAQ on the Kickstarter is to say, well, this is, here's the general kind of questions. The knowledge base almost needs to be kind of off the campaign and off on BGG. And as I say, it looks like you've got some cracking support there from some of the guys who seem to have become your little group of champions and actually taking some of the information and depositing it on kind of like on Board Game Geek itself, which seems to be quite cool.
They seem to be Tristan's champions. He's brought them along with him, like a school of gladiators from his previous campaigns, isn't it? It's rather great, isn't it?
Is it kind of strange, I guess, having a group of people that you kind of don't know if you pass them in the street, kind of being quite supportive and questioning and kind of helpful and everything like that, kind of, is that kind of like a weird situation to be in? Because you hear a lot of people talk about kind of like, forums, they can be a terrible mess, comment sections, they're toxic and should be banned. But the Kickstarter, what you've got is you seem to have a nice little group of people who are not only wanting to jump in and help the campaign succeed, but also seem to be quite happy to answer other people's questions.
Yeah, that's terrific, isn't it? I don't know how that compares to other campaigns where obviously some of them are complete, like you said, they're like the YouTube comment section. They're just complete hornet's nests. But ours is the total opposite of that so far. So
we've been really lucky. I think
they're amazing, aren't they?
Yeah, over the last few campaigns, we've kind of been lucky enough to cultivate a community that is really positive and responds really well to, gives us great feedback and allows us to feedback to them, and people we just get along with and have similar tastes to. This game is based on a certain movie, and it's lots of inspirations from science fiction and horror and stuff like that. Yeah. So all the crowd that we've gathered are of a similar ilk, and they all want similar things to us. And more than anything, over the last, this is the fourth Kickstarter from my point of view now, all of the groups that we've had have been kind of a laugh, like a good crowd. And when I meet them in person at conventions and stuff like that, they're just people that are really easy to get along with. And I think that's reflected in the comment section, where you do have a lot of really supportive chit chat and banter, and just talking about movies and whatever else, but also about the game. And I know you guys have mentioned the YouTube comment sections, and they can get a bit crazy, but in our experience of Kickstarter so far, we've been really lucky to have such great crowds, and Lifeforms no exception. We've got brilliant backers, and we're dead lucky and happy to have that. It's a great situation to be in.
Are you recognising some of the names that you've seen from other campaigns in Tristan? Are the same kind of...
Definitely, yeah. And they race each other to be the first to back, and stuff like that. So they're kind of becoming champions, almost like brand champions for us, which is fantastic, because those guys are worth the weight in gold. Because if you... The way that Kickstarters grow organically, you have your set amount of funding you can put into advertising and marketing and whatever else. But what we rely on as a very small company is word of mouth. That's what got us funded in the first Kickstarter, and it's what's worked ever since. Because there's that old adage that if you tell 7 people, then they tell 7 people, and they tell 7 people, and that's kind of how the word spreads. So if you can get even a small group of champions who are willing to shout about you on social media, or review the game, or talk about it in any form, and share images, or even just jokes and stuff. Like on the Kickstarter page, we got guys who are sharing like spoof stories about aliens and stuff like that, and they just keep the idea and the project in the zeitgeist, and they keep it alive, and they keep breathing air into it. And the people who come and thumb stuff that we do on Board Game Geek and things like that, those guys are invaluable, because they're the ones who make it happen, and they're the ones who tell their friends, and there's still people who come up to me now and go, "Wow, I've only just found out about Gloom of Kilforth." And from my point of view, it's like, wow, that's crazy. Everything I've been doing for years has been to try and bring attention to this game. But of course, we only have this tiny little echo chamber, and outside of that, nobody knows about it. So there's no sort of lid on how big these games can get if you manage to get the right community together to share it in the right places, and that's why we were able to go from 0 to hundreds of backers within a matter of hours. So it's definitely. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, does that put you in a comfortable place? I mean, do you have to worry about then not being overconfident when you're looking at the next kind of campaign? Because I've seen,
rest on your laurels
campaigns,
sort of thing.
Yeah, I kind of like, no, okay, I'll be able to put out the next game without too much worry, because I know at least I've got 200 backers kind of sitting there. You seem to be very, very attentive, I guess, is what I guess. I don't see a kind of a the game's funded. Oh, you might not see us for like 6 weeks because we're going away and doing stuff. But you still seem to be a kind of a, there still seems to be, there's always things going on in the Facebook groups and stuff like that, where you're kind of popping up and saying, even it's not production, but it's just saying, right guys, this is what we're doing. Here's some ideas. The Lifeform group had a mind of its own before the campaign was kind of even ready to go. There was people kind of getting excited and kind of getting ideas together. Are you? I mean, is keeping the community going, is that almost like an additional kind of thing that you have to kind of concentrate on in order to be successful? Because
I think it's the first and foremost thing, really, because without the community, the game wouldn't happen. We're not in a position yet where we can go straight to the printers and run off, X thousand copies and just have them sell. We 100% rely and are fed by our communities, and so how we build them is crucial to me. So from my point of view on a daily basis, I did mention this as well earlier, I think that I never take any of it for granted. At any moment, any of this could stop, if Kickstarter stops or whatever. So I think every day that we have this ability to share creative projects that people are willing to get behind and put their money behind is a brilliant day, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But I think one of the only ways you can demonstrate that gratitude to backers is by giving them the best possible service you can. And from my point of view, for example, answering every single comment on the comment section on the Kickstarter is the minimum that I can do. If we were ever in a lucky enough position to not be able to do that from a logistic point of view, then fantastic. That means we've grown so much. But at this stage, whilst our community is still relatively small, but still big enough to handle large print runs, then yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to keep everyone informed at every step of the process. Because, bear in mind, I've backed hundreds of Kickstarters myself, and I want the best possible service from those guys. And so I've learned from those guys as well, the mistakes that some of them have made, the great things that a lot of them are doing. And I sort of try and pick and choose the best things that other people are doing and try to emulate those guys. So, so staying on top of the comments and being reactive to backer messages and emails is, a huge priority for me.
Has it made you then look on other Kickstarters with the slightly different eyes, and do you end up in the situation kind of where you can get slightly frustrated with the way you see kind of other campaigns being run, and say, basically, listen, if you gave me this for 3 days, I could sort you out. Just give me the campaign. Or do you kind of feel, or you're kind of sitting there going, shh, What are you doing?
That's an interesting question, actually, because there was one of the earliest Kickstarters I backed. I remember posting like a really snarky or reactive comment about it, and I felt guilty about it for days afterwards. And of course, now being a creator, you know, I look back on that and I'm just like, oh my God, what was I doing? And it was slagging off the creators for the way that they were running the campaign without any sort of real concept of the stress that it can inflict on people, on creators of projects. So I think if it has changed my mindset about other Kickstarters at all, then probably the biggest change would be for me, from my point of view. I'm not saying that all backers should do this, but to be more forgiving of other creators and the mistakes that they make, because I can certainly recognise some happening earlier that I wouldn't have been able to without experience. And I've seen other projects tank and go under, you know, when they're not able to fulfill. And my heart really goes out to them, because I don't think anybody is in like the board game design route on Kickstarter to rip people off. You know, I think there's a misconception that perhaps some companies are. I think mostly at the end of the day, if you drill down deeply, the guy who's come up with the idea for the game wanted to make something creative and to have it happen. And if it failed, then usually it might be due to poor planning or whatever. But I don't think it's ever a case of, you know, some guys in black and white striped tops with swag bags going, yeah, let's rip off gamers, you know. And so you know, there's one guy who's being pilloried on the forums from his Kickstarter, but he refuses to update, you know, and he won't even send out a message saying, you know, look guys, I really mishandled this, and this is where you know we need to be at. This is the thing I need to do to get it working again. And my heart goes out to him. It's a terrible situation to be in, you know, because at the end of the day, he has taken quite a big chunk of money and either mishandled it or whatever. So I don't know. It is a tricky one, and I know at the end of the day that shouldn't happen. If people do pledge on Kickstarter now, I think we're way past the days where you can say you're backing an idea, because people believe they're backing a product now. And I think you have to come to Kickstarter prepared with that product, and you have to be ready to go at the end of it with the budget that you have. And if you can't make that work, you should cancel the project before it funds, because otherwise you get into all kinds of trouble. Yeah.
No, I have seen that. I've seen kind of people kind of relaunch with very, very low budgets, and I'm wondering, it's kind of like, you better hope this doesn't fund, because I think you're going to be
in trouble,
in a kind of potentially in a spot of bother here.
Yeah, because if you have to make up that difference yourself, you need to have a big fund. You know, for example, shipping is not something to be sniffed at all. You know, that is a huge thing, and we've seen gigantic projects suffer by not planning for those in advance. And you know, and when I see, I don't know which one you're thinking of, but there's a couple recently that have gone on and they have these incredibly low funding goals, and like you say, it's like, what are you going to do with that if it funds? I'm genuinely curious, because that would put you in a direct financial hot water sort of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen ones for like card games and stuff like that. I mean, and I know that there's some guys that they got very close to funding last time, and then they just said, I'll tell you what, we need to come back because there's certain things that we need to look at. And they took on feedback, and they said, well, basically, the only way that we're really going to kind of move this forward is by taking that feedback on board, going away, having a think about it, potentially renegotiating a lot of things that they had kind of planned out before, and then coming back kind of bigger and kind of stronger, which is kind of fair enough. Yeah. I do worry about some who are saying, yeah, we've cut our budget or funding goal in half, and I'm kind of like, mate, that's that could be maybe, but we'll see. But then again, it is the competition that is Kickstarter out there.
Yeah.
And you I mean, I would say, I'd put you, I think Frank West, Cesar Aljazar, guys like Edo Baraf, those guys, you're not kind of, when you launch Andrew Burkett, lovely Andrew, who did Supernatural Socks, which is fantastic. But you guys are established now. so that you seem to be in this situation where you're liked, you're respected, you have a good community, but you're not going to be going out and saying, right, we need 70 grand in order to make this work. Kind of, you sometimes end with like 70 grand, 80 grand, because you've kind of run a really, really good campaign. And then there seems to be the big guys at the top, and then there seems to be the guys at the bottom who are kind of starting out for the first time. And what I'm seeing more and more, and I don't know if you've seen this, I've seen a lot of guys, first time, they're not getting there.
Yeah.
And then they're coming back and they are getting there, but that's because it's like, you don't learn how to eat an elephant until you start to eat an elephant.
Yeah, no, it's hard. And if those guys are coming back and they've learned that, they've learned from their initial Kickstarter, then I think that almost puts you in advantage, because the people who did turn up the first time round still want to see that project get made. So you've got that pre-established community. They know that you're responding to feedback. And as long as you're not, going outside of your projections or going into risky financial territory, that's probably actually a really good approach. And I imagine, I know now, looking at Kickstarter, it is incredibly difficult to get funded, and especially really difficult for people who are starting out the first time and don't have that established audience, because where do you start building it? But yeah, it does. There's two camps there. There's the guys who learn from it and come back and are better prepared and have better expectations of how much they're going to fund by and what they can afford to do with that money. And then I think there's perhaps another side who aren't as prepared and are maybe chancing it and maybe, want that dream more than anything. I've heard horror stories about people investing their own money, to get the Kickstarter over the funding line, which I think is really dangerous territory, because then you're full on gambling, almost. Are
they backing it themselves, as you mean?
Yeah, or getting family members to push it over the over the finish line and stuff. Which
I think you see this sometimes when you see. I've seen ones on occasion where it's kind of like have your kind of like your special edition, and pay kind of like 250, 500 quid, $1,000, $1,500 for this extra special shiny edition that gets you up in the morning, makes you a cup of coffee and a bacon sandwich kind of one, and you're kind of like, you see that kind
stay
of
at the house of the designer and meet the family for a week.
Exactly, and could you bring back my slippers, Mum? Because I think I left them in your house last time I was round. Thanks, kind of thing. But I mean, kind of each their own. Mark, what has it been? Has it been quite cool, kind of meeting the people that are going to play your game before they kind of play the game? I mean, because traditionally you were putting stuff out there that I was guessing the amount of kind of potential player interaction maybe wasn't as high as it is now, and essentially you're getting people that haven't even played the product, but you're kind of meeting them and you're learning about them and you're finding out kind of what they're like. Is that a bit of a kind of a strange situation to be in, almost like a bit culture shocky?
You mean just in regards to the Kickstarter, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is strange. As I said, I'm still, I feel like I'm being pulled in all sorts of directions. I'm not quite sure, it's undiscovered terrain. I don't really know how I'm supposed to feel. Though obviously excitement is certainly high on the list. It hasn't been as much fun as people play testing the game, when I've gone to events or to people's shops, bricks and mortar stores and stuff. It's just that whole people are right in front of you, and you're interacting with them is much more fun than obviously over the internet. But people's positive response to it, either on the forums for Board Game Geek or other game forums, or in the talkback area of Kickstarter, it's been very encouraging. I've been pleasantly surprised by how like the Shadows of Brimstone comment section it is, etc. So I haven't really got any more thoughts on it. Any great. I'm excited by it, and it's been an interesting ride. We're still at the beginning of, actually, aren't we? So
Yeah. I mean, were you kind of were you dubious at the beginning,
What, of using
or were you?
Kickstarter or?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, the thing is, it seems like such a massively crowded market now. In a good way for consumers. It's a cornucopia of riches and embarrassment. Really, there's so many games now compared to any year before now. The further back you go, it's like an exponential curve of games, and I almost at the point now of thinking that you need the signal boost of Kickstarter unless you've got a massive IP behind you. And even then, Kickstarter obviously bolted on helps as well. A lot of really great games just sort of disappear between the cracks, as I'm sure you've played some of them or that. And so I think you almost have to go to Kickstarter. So yeah, it's a signal boost that you need. From a marketing point of view, it's indispensable, isn't it? It rides you up the hotness on Board Game Geek. You get all the hits and the torrent of interest that pours onto it when one of those starts. It's very difficult to generate that by other means, and a normal, a traditional publisher release would, find difficulty in getting traction. So the other games I've had released have been through traditional publishers, and some of those don't actually like Kickstarter, some do, but they do. Some of their great games, and it's almost, if you looked at the signal that was coming out when they were released, it was barely a blip. Nobody notices them. There's just, unless the game's Batman or, like you mentioned earlier, Pacific Rim, it doesn't even matter. Sometimes it doesn't even matter if the game's any good, because it's got the, that's the power of the IP, isn't it? If you stick Star Wars or Lord of the Rings onto the game, you've got an evergreen franchise that immediately everybody's ears perk up, really, unless you absolutely hate something like Star Trek or that. So, but, when you were talking about how campaigns would be managed, it'd be really interesting to see how Tristan would manage a campaign that had an established IP, because obviously it would provide a massive jump in attention, and it would be great. We don't know what the future holds, so
yeah. I think what would be interesting with that is you'd get people that would come in with preconceived kind of conceptions about a game, conceptions or misconceptions about how they would like to see kind of their board game appear on Kickstarter.
Yeah, everyone has their own idea, don't they, about IPs? Oh, well, if this is Star Wars, it has to have this, or, because everybody has their own experience of it, so they would be coming to it with those expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about Batman with Mike Barnes, and it was basically a case of we mentioned this both, I think we'd like a Batman game, but we'd like a detective Batman game.
Where you're actually trying to solve crimes rather than just beat up bad guys.
Yeah, it's in all fairness. Yeah, I know, but it's kind of like, as a case, as we joked aside, it was like, in all fairness, we'd probably prefer to have something like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, as opposed to another kind of, I don't know. Yeah, it's like, just in case, you don't want to end up annoying people, but, you're reskinning Conan with Batman.
Yeah.
And there was a famous Batman comic. I think it was right after Jason Todd died, and just before Tim Drake turned up, and Two-Face was the main protagonist, and Batman was saying he had to stop thinking with his fists, because he was just going about beating the pulp out of everybody to get the answers, rather than actually being a detective. And I thought, I've not seen a greater kind of description of potentially what the current kind of Kickstarter is. I know that's maybe a terrible thing. People are going to say, no, it sounds fantastic. Listen, it looks fantastic. It looks amazing. It's funded extremely well, and God bless them all for doing so well with that campaign. But it's not my Batman game, which is an unfortunate thing. But that's, that is one of those things. Obviously, going back to the community, going back to the comments and comments and questions are all about tone. Is there? I mean, there's going to be backers who are going to potentially, hopefully, maybe, please listen to this, love us. But have you
like
got
and subscribe?
Like us, yeah, exactly. Don't give us 10 stars. But as I say, is there any messages? I mean, anything you'd like to kind of make the backers aware that you'd like to, kind of put out there, or is there anything you'd like to say to anybody that's maybe sitting on the fence at all? I guess it's Tristan. Is there anything you'd like to maybe help spread the word out or get the message about?
Yeah, I think you mentioned before, or you sort of in different words phrased this thing about do we perhaps rest on our laurels a little bit if we're already funded, and we've got other games funded and stuff. I would say the biggest thing that we need to continue the signal boost is for people to talk about the game and to share and keep commenting and keep active in the forums and keep feeding back to us. We do respond to everything, and everything that we can do, we will do. So, for example, lots of people have asked about the solo play. Well, Mark's now done a solo playthrough video. People are asking for the rule book, which we wanted to have online before we went live, but as it happens, our graphic designer's holidays timed up quite badly, but we'll have that online before the end of the campaign as well. And even other stuff, like somebody suggested we change the layout of the stretch goals to show the components rather than just like, an explosion saying that we'd hit this stretch goal, which is a great idea. So we just implemented it as, straight away. So, we respond to as much feedback as we can. And in return, we just ask that, our backers share as much as possible. And even if you think your voice or vote doesn't count, it does, because we've lost out on the top spot in certain competitions on Board Game Geek and things like that by literally 1 or 2 votes. So every time that we share anything that we need, a retweet or a Facebook like or share or anything like that, if you think for 1 second retweeting it again won't help, you're wrong. It really will, and it really does make a difference, because if somebody sees it in your Facebook feed once or twice, they might ignore it. If they see it 3 or 4 times, it brings it to their attention, and then after that, 5 or 6 times, they're going to click through. They're going to see. What's that?
I block Tristan. It doesn't know.
Dear backers, please don't block us. But
don't do that.
Yeah, just spreading the word is the only thing that we can ask of anybody, and I think there is perhaps a misconception that once a backer's put the funds in, we've hit the 100% funding target, so anything after that is bonus, and that's true. But it doesn't mean that we want our backers to then just go away and move on to the next project. We want them to stay involved, stay engaged, at least for the next 30 days until we can take it out of their hands and run off to the printers and do our bit. For the next few weeks, it's more crucial than I think I can really emphasise that people get involved, thumb, like, share, talk about the game, ask questions. Asking a question about the game is as valid as saying, yay, this game looks brilliant, because it's keeping the signal boost, as Mark calls it, it's keeping it out there, it's keeping it on people's radar. And that's what we need, that's 100% what we need. So, well, fingers crossed.
Back the game. That's my number one thing. If people think that there's going to be thousands of retail copies swimming, because there's some to be a misconception that, just wait for retail, and then I'll leave it a year, but they might be, like a lot of people who were trying to get hold of Gloomer Killforth after the first campaign. They were like, I can't actually find it, and it was sold out everywhere. And we can very much see that Lifeform might be in a very similar position. As Tristan's not a massive company, so we're not going to be printing, another 10,000 copies or anything. It's going to be the backers and a small amount on top. So if anybody's listening to this wondering whether they should back it, definitely. Retweet as much as you like, but definitely back it.
And those retail orders are based on the success of the campaign as well. So
right.
if everybody sat back and said, "I'll wait for retail," the game would never exist. Which is sort of chicken and egg type situation. I understand some people would want to wait for retail, but if there is a possibility that we wouldn't go to retail, you wouldn't want to miss out. And it's also being a part of making it happen. I think there's something to be said for that, coming together as a community and making a creative project like this real. I think is a really cool position to be in from obviously from a creative perspective, but from a backer perspective, to get involved and be a part of it. And hopefully that idea is already caught on, which is why we've been able to get as far as we have. But there's still a lot further we can go, and there's a lot of time left. But in the campaign, but all of the sharing and liking and talking and chatter and noise on the internet that we can get is hugely appreciated.
Do you feel under a pressure, self-imposed pressure, by essentially having a couple of games in production at once? Because you've got 1066 and you've got the reprint of Gloom of Kilforth as well, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I have to devote myself 100% to each of those, you know, and I'm not sure if we mentioned last time on the show about how I refused to hit go on the Kickstarter until we could finally say all of the files for 1066 Tears to Many Mothers have been received and sent off to the printers, because then from that moment, it's out of my hands. You know, there's nothing more I can really do with it. So it was important for me to show all of our 1066 backers that project has had 100% of us and will continue to do so. You know, I'll be able to feed back on the proofs and everything. But to assure those guys that that's definitely in hand. I think and hope that we've brought enough goodwill with the delivery of Gloom and Kilforth that people know that when it arrives, it's going to be of the highest quality that we could possibly deliver. And I think and hope that people see that about Lifeform as well. And of course, we still got Gloom and Kilforth and the expansions is in a similar situation where in the next month or two, we'll have all of the final art. But from a game development point of view, that game is designed and ready and finished. And the only role I have in it up until we go to the printers is literally the artist sending me an email saying, here's a piece of art, and me saying, yeah, it's great, or no, it needs changing. And sort of trying to get that message across to our Gloom and Kilforth backers, that's, you know, with all due respect, that is my role in that process now. I think that was important to me as well, that people know that it's not like I'm juggling 1,000 projects and can't handle them, because they're effectively, from my point of view, parcelled off. And because we're an indie company, because we're very small, to keep us alive and sustained, we're going to have to keep releasing games. You know, if people want us to continue, we will have to do it with more regularity. And that was one of the reasons I invested in Mark's game as well, is because I'm not going to be able to make a game every 6 months, I don't think, that's going to be, you know, the same sort of caliber as Gloom and Kilforth and 1066. So if I want to grow the company in the long term, taking on other people's projects is going to help with that. It's going to help, you know, if I do a game a year, then somebody else's game every 6 months, you know, every other 6 months or whatever, then that's the way to keep the company breathing and to keep the funds flowing and keep the games coming out. But yeah, any backer of any one of our projects needs to know with 100% certainty that each of those projects is its own complete project and has its own funding completely separate from the next one, so that we fund our projects up front through Kickstarter. We don't use the next Kickstarter to fund the last one, which is obviously that's where trouble lies. And
that's where trouble
lies.
And
I've seen that. I've seen other companies do that, and it caused chaos. So yeah, no, those things I need to be 100% clear about, and I've tried to in the updates. I've tried to keep people abreast of where we're at in each game. We've got a slate graphic now that we use to show everybody where each of the games is at in the design process, because I saw another great guy that I admire do that, and it just, you know, it opened a door in my mind. I was like, that's how you do it. That's how you get across the update to everybody of where each game is at. And I think as long as you're transparent on each game, on each project, and as long as you keep everyone up to date, I think hopefully we'll keep the goodwill of the backers, and that'll keep people coming back for more games.
Do you feel, the way Hall and Nothing Productions is going, that you are staying down the fairly serious kind of games?
Like theme wise,
are we going to see?
Yeah. No, I do. At the moment, I do. Because those are the games that interest me, and more often than not, you know, we have sacred Thursday night game night. And all the games that we play every Thursday are thematic games. Those are just the kinds of games that interest me. That's not to say that I wouldn't play a game that doesn't fall into that category. I recently played through an entire campaign of Charterstone with my wife and son. So, and it was lovely. It was sort of chibi, big-headed cartoon characters building a village together, and it was a really lovely theme and everything. And it's probably not the kind of game that I'd play with my Thursday night game group, but it is a game that I thoroughly enjoyed and enjoyed from a sort of storytelling perspective with the family. So I certainly wouldn't write it off as an option to produce like a cutesy Ghibli Studios inspired type game, or something in the vein of like Ni no Kuni or something like that. But for the time being, there's a lot of darkness in my head that I want to get out of my own projects. So there's going to be more sort of horror and like monsters and dark fantasy themed games before we get around to furballs and Pokemons or whatever.
Exploding Kittens 2 or Sleeping Queens 2 or something like that.
Unless I had an IP, of course, in which case I'd sell out faster than you could say the word sell out.
So we're not going to get the My Puppy picking his favourite biscuit game from you guys.
We could always re-theme Gloomy Killforth to My Little Pony, I suppose.
So I always thought that would be pretty good. I always thought I want the toad-licking puppy.
There is a card in Gloomy Killforth called Dog Ninja, which always confuse people who aren't backers. That's my handle on Board Game Geek is Ninja Dog. But people who don't get that are just like, oh, this breaks the theme of the game entirely, and so there are, jokes like that cause a very, very minor backlash. But yeah, we could probably embrace that for a full game at some point, but I'd see that maybe in the future rather than anytime soon.
Are you now full-time? Well, that sounded quite high. Hello! Are you now Mrs. Darkfire? Hello, dear. Are you going to be working full-time in the industry anytime, Mr. Halls?
That's 100% the plan. But I am actually a freelance video producer, and I'm still canvassing for work, so it's not there yet. But the way that it works, from my point of view, is all of the funding for each project stays in the bank until every single cost is paid out. So I know, for example, I won't pay myself out of 1066 Tears to Many Mothers anything until everybody has their copy in hand. And at that point, I'll sort of take what's left. And so that's how I kind of intend to run all of our projects, to make sure that all of the funds are dedicated to that project until it's finished. Which puts me in a weird financial position because technically I'm still a little bit reliant on the video production stuff. So yeah, one day, I think once enough of these projects are behind me, I'll be able to start cashing in kind of thing and maybe take it full time. But we're not a multi-million-dollar company yet, so we're not at that level where I can go, yay, and do like a bath of cash or anything. So I'm just sort of
an Instagram picture with a carpet bag filled with billfolds.
Yeah, no.
Just you walking into the game store, going, more money, and just like going there, just spread it out in the face and going, yes, I'll take all of the games that you have, son. Spit them in the bag. No, these are 20s. 20s. Not even the plastic tins. You know what I do with the plastic tins? Use them for insulation in my loft. No use to me.
One day, though,
anyway.
And maybe next year, Richard, we'll readdress this point, and you can have me back on the show, and I'll tell you how I'm driving a golden Lamborghini, and it's got a hot tub in the back and stuff, all from board games, because it's that kind of industry.
I just have to say, at the moment, I'm kind of probably more likely to get Mark on because he's my favourite. I'm just saying, I'm sorry.
Mine too.
Do you know? Yeah, exactly. Everybody loves Mark.
Do they? I'm not sure. I'm not as good at gathering my thoughts into coherent sentences as Tristan is.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm exactly the same, my darling.
There's nothing coherent about my sentences.
Guys, this is exciting times because you guys seem to be kind of hitting it out of the park, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with the kind of the rest of the campaign. At time that we are talking, you've got basically just under 4 weeks to go, which is a long time considering where you guys are just now. You're at about 37,000. You've hit almost 800 backers, so it's like you're a good strong place where it seems like a vibrant and kind of active community. I mean, what I'll do is I'll stick the link for the campaign in the show notes so that we've got notes to show, as always. But where can we find you on the internet webs, gentlemen? I know it was only a couple of weeks ago, but it's like, you know, I mean, check my memory's that good. One of you is Ninja Dog and the other one's Lullabud or something like that. I can't remember.
Follows Lullabud.
Is that right?
Just Google toad licking, I'll come up. There's a picture of me somewhere with a huge fat warty toad. Don't worry.
That's just a vision I don't want in my head, because I know you have a slight beard, or you have a beard.
Yes, it's a phase that's lasted about 18 months.
Bits of toad slime in your face, in your beard, and you've slightly just poisoned yourself, which is always fantastic. As I say, I'll put everything in the show notes so that we've got notes to show. Best of luck with the campaign, gentlemen. As I say, it's got chins a wagging, people are talking, and there's a lot of excitement and possibilities, and people are talking expansions and getting involved, which is always fantastic. And also, thank you very, very much for coming on.
Thanks for having us. It's always a pleasure.
It's good, you know, we didn't have to record using tin cans and bits of string and harsh language, which is always good. If you want to keep an eye on what we're doing, by all means, jump on to the various social media channels that we inhabit. I'm just gonna do a quick shout out because Ian from the Giant Brain, who was on last month, I believe, they've started their own podcast called Brainwaves, which is a kind of a mixture of kind of like reading articles and kind of like reading board game related news articles, and it's kind of going down the kind of like the day-to-day type of vibe. So they're young, they're new, they're going to be another Scottish podcast, which means they're very, very important. So there's going to be about 3 of us, which is always good. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to and what we're doing, then as I say, go to Twitter. You'll find us on We're Not Wizards. You'll find us on YouTube at We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast. You'll find us on Facebook at We're Not Wizards. You'll find us on all the podcast places like Spotify and Stitcher and Spreaker and Acast and Apple Podcasts as well. And as we say, if you have liked what you've listened to tonight, jump on to Apple Podcasts and drop us a subscription. That is always very helpful and very welcome. If you like us even more, please consider dropping us a rating or a review. You don't have to leave us any words. You just have to leave us a couple of stars. But as we say, don't give us 10 stars because that makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1, because I'll end up looking like the Lifeform in this board game, because I'm a pretty ugly crier. And I had all my hair cut off, and I look like I'm about to head into death row. It's not good. But give us a 5, because it's in the middle, and it's average. And we are very, very average. Pretty average. Very average. Extremely average. But the people who have not been average tonight, the wonderful, the fantastic Mark Chaplin, Tristan Hall, Hall and Nothing Productions, look at Lifeform, give it a butcher's, give it a scream, give it some money, potentially, up to you at the end of the day. But definitely give it a look. But again, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming on. 2 things to do. Remember, we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, gentlemen?
No.
Which is the medium.
And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it is a goodbye. Goodbye from Mark. Goodbye from Tristan. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, and sometimes in Kickstarter, everybody can see you pledge. But until the next time. You get those emails nowadays, you can't go near nothing with, like, getting 15 emails saying all these folk have, like, just backed this thing. And it's like, what, am I missing out on something? Fantastic. But until the next time, goodbye.